She saw her ex-commander leading an army toward her village. Desperate, she ran into forbidden territory and collapsed at a stranger's feet. What she didn't know, the man whose legs she hid between was the vampire king, and he claimed her as his. The smell hit Celine first, burning wood, scorched flesh, and something metallic that coated her tongue like poison. She dropped the basket of herbs she'd been gathering, her boots pounding against a forest path as she sprinted toward home. The blood moon hung fat and crimson overhead, turning everything the color of fresh wounds. Smoke billowed above the tree line, thick and black, blotting out the stars.
No.
Please, no. When she burst through the tree line, her village was already dying. Flames consumed the thatched roofs like hungry beasts. Bodies lay scattered in the dirt, neighbors, friends, the baker who always saved her extra bread. Celine's heart hammered against her ribs as she stumbled forward, searching desperately through the chaos. Mother, father. Her scream tore through the crackling fire, but no one answered. Then she saw him, standing in the center of the destruction like a king surveying his conquest. Commander Eric. Her ex-fiancé wore his silver armor, the Holy Legion's crest gleaming on his chest. His golden hair was tied back, revealing the sharp, handsome features she'd once traced with gentle fingers. Those same features now held nothing but cold determination as he drove his blessed sword through an elderly man's chest. Eric, Celine's voice cracked. What have you done? He turned slowly, and for a heartbeat, just one, something flickered in his ice-blue eyes. Regret? Recognition? Then it vanished, replaced by steel. Celine, he wiped blood from his blade with deliberate care. I wondered when you'd return. Your timing is unfortunate. You're killing them. She ran forward, but two soldiers grabbed her arms, holding her back. These are innocent people. We were going to marry. Eric, you promised to protect this village. That was before I knew the truth. He stalked toward her, his jaw tight. Before I discovered what your family has been hiding. Ice flooded Celine's veins. I don't know what you're talking about. The Dawn relic, his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Don't lie to me. Your mother's bloodline has guarded it for centuries. A weapon that could end the vampire plague forever, and you people have been protecting those monsters instead of destroying them. Celine's breath caught. Her mother had told her stories, legends of an ancient artifact that once brought peace between humans and vampires. But it was just a fairy tale, wasn't it? Where is it, Celine? Eric grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Tell me, and I'll make their deaths quick. Lie, and I'll burn every village from here to the capital until I find it. She spat in his face. His hand cracked across her cheek with enough force to split her lip. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth as she stumbled, held upright only by the soldier's grip. Eric, please. A woman's voice, weak, desperate, cut through the roar of flames. Celine's head snapped up. Her mother was being dragged from their burning cottage. Her father collapsed beside her in the dirt, bleeding from a wound in his side. Mother! Celine thrashed against her captors, but they held firm. Eric didn't even look at them. Last chance, Celine. The relic.
Now.
I don't have it. I don't even know if it's real. He nodded once, sharp and final. Then they're useless to me. No. The soldier's blade fell. Then another. Her mother's scream cut off mid-breath. Her father never made a sound. Something inside Celine shattered. Not her heart, but something deeper. Something primal and ancient that had been sleeping in her blood for generations. The world turned red at the edges, and power she didn't understand surged through her veins like lightning. She moved. The soldiers holding her flew backward as if struck by an invisible fist. Celine's hand shot out, grabbing a fallen sword, and she swung at Eric with strength that shouldn't have been possible. The blade caught him across the ribs, slicing through his armor like paper. He staggered back, eyes wide with shock. What? How did you? Celine didn't wait for him to finish. She ran. Behind her, Eric's roar split the night. After her! I want her alive. Her legs carried her toward the one place no soldier would follow, the Ebonwood Forest. The cursed boundary. Stories said that anyone who entered never returned, dragged into darkness by the vampire king himself. Right now, darkness sounded better than what lay behind her. Branches tore at her skin as she plunged into the trees. The blood moon's light barely penetrated the canopy, turning the forest into a maze of shadows. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred with tears, but she wouldn't stop. Not until the screams of her dying village finally faded. Not until the only sound was her ragged breathing and the thunder of her breaking heart. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing against a massive oak tree. Blood, her mother's, her father's, her own, stained her hands. The reality of what had happened crashed over her in waves. They're gone. Everyone's gone. And Eric, the man who'd promised to love her, to build a life with her, had killed them all. A branch snapped somewhere in the darkness. Celine's head jerked up, her hand instinctively reaching for the sword she dropped somewhere in her flight. The forest had gone unnaturally quiet, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Then she felt it, a presence, ancient and powerful, watching her from the shadows. Her mother's dying words echoed in her memory, spoken months ago during a fevered illness. If you're ever in danger, child, run to the Old Kingdom. The King of Shadows remembers the old debts. Celine pushed herself to her feet, swaying. She had nothing left to lose. I'm here, she whispered to the darkness. If you're real, I'm here. The shadows answered with a sound like distant thunder, and the forest began to move. The trees parted like a curtain being drawn back. Celine stumbled forward, half blind with exhaustion and grief, following a path that hadn't existed moments before. The air grew colder with each step, her breath misting in front of her face despite it being summer. The blood moon's light vanished entirely, replaced by an eerie silver glow that seemed to emanate from the forest itself. Then the trees ended, and she stood before something impossible. A citadel of black stone rose from the earth like a sleeping giant, its spires clawing at the sky. Gargoyles perched along the parapets, their stone eyes tracking her movement. Massive doors stood open, an invitation or a trap, she couldn't tell which. Celine's survival instinct screamed at her to run, but where? Back to Eric's soldiers? Back to her burning village and the corpses of everyone she'd loved. She walked through the doors. The throne room was vast and empty, lit by moonlight streaming through shattered stained glass windows. Centuries of dust coated the floor, disturbed only by her footprints. At the far end, carved from obsidian, stood a throne that seemed to drink in the light around it. Well, a voice like dark velvet echoed through the chamber. This is unexpected. Celine spun, and her heart stopped. He materialized from the shadows themselves, tall, impossibly beautiful, and utterly terrifying. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his shoulders in waves. Pale skin stretched over sharp features that looked carved from marble. But it was his eyes that froze her in place, crimson red, ancient and knowing, holding centuries of secrets. The Vampire King. He wore black leather and silver chains, moving with predatory grace as he circled her. 3 other vampires emerged behind him, his guards, their fangs already extending. A human, one hissed. In the sacred hall. She defiles it with her presence. Kill her, another growled. Slowly, they moved forward, and Celine's body finally remembered how to function. She bolted, not toward the door, but toward the only source of power in the room. The king. She dove past him, collapsing behind the massive throne, her blood-stained hands gripping the cold stone. The guards lunged, but she scrambled around the throne's base, putting it between her and death. Please, she gasped, looking up at the vampire king who now stood above her. Please, don't let him find me. The king tilted his head, studying her with those burning red eyes. A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. How curious. You flee from humans into a vampire's lair, then hide behind his throne like a cornered rabbit. The guards circled the throne, their claws extended. Celine's options ran out. In pure desperation, she threw herself forward and ended up pressed against the king's legs, her arms wrapped around his knees, trembling and bloodied. "Please," she whispered against the leather of his pants. "I have nowhere else to go." The throne room went deathly silent. The king looked down at her, this broken, bleeding human girl clinging to him, and something flickered across his ancient features. Amusement? Intrigue? His nostrils flared slightly, and his eyes narrowed. "You smell of old magic," he murmured. "Not human at all, beneath the surface." One of the guards reached for Celine. "My lord, let me remove this." "Touch her," the king's voice dropped to a lethal whisper, "and die." The guard froze, hand suspended in midair. The king raised one pale hand, and dark energy rippled through the room like a shockwave. Every vampire in the chamber fell to one knee, heads bowed. "I invoke the royal protection," he declared, his voice echoing with power that made the stone walls tremble. "This human is under my personal safeguard. Any who harm her will answer to me." Celine felt something snap into place, like an invisible cord tying her heart to his. The sensation was overwhelming, intimate, and terrifying all at once. "My lord, you cannot." A female vampire with silver hair stepped forward, her eyes wide with horror. "The royal protection is a sacred blood oath. If she dies, the bond will." "I know what it will do, Mira," the king's tone held finality. "My word is given." He looked down at Celine again, and this time his smile was sharp enough to cut. "Rise, little rabbit. You sought sanctuary in the shadows. I wonder if you understand the price." Celine slowly released his legs and stood on shaking limbs. Up close, the king was even more magnificent and horrifying. She could feel his power pressing against her skin like a physical weight. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Celine." "Celine," he tasted the word like wine. "I am Kale, king of the eternal night. And you, my unexpected guest, have just become the most protected and most trapped human in existence." His hand wrapped around her wrist, and she felt that strange bond pulse between them. "Welcome to your new cage." Celine woke to silk sheets and the smell of jasmine. For one blissful moment, she thought everything had been a nightmare. Then she opened her eyes to a ceiling painted with constellations that actually moved, and reality crashed back down. Her village. Her parents. Eric's betrayal. The Vampire King. She sat up quickly, finding herself in an enormous chamber carved from dark stone. Moonlight poured through tall windows, still moonlight, though she must have slept for hours. Did the sun ever rise here? The door burst open without warning. A woman swept in, the silver-haired vampire from last night, Mira. Behind her trailed three others, all wearing expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. "Awake finally," Mira said coldly.
"Good.
"The king demands your presence."
Now."
Celine's hand instinctively went to her chest, where she could feel a strange warmth pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "What did he do to me?" "What he shouldn't have." Mira grabbed Celine's arm, yanking her to her feet. "Move." They dragged her through corridors of black marble and silver filigree, past tapestries depicting battles between humans and vampires. Other vampires stopped to stare as they passed, their whispers following like poison. "The human who touched the king. Unclean creature. She'll be dead by nightfall." The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. Kale sat at the head of a long obsidian table, surrounded by a dozen vampires who looked old enough to have witnessed the birth of civilization. He changed into a deep crimson coat that made his pale skin look luminescent. His eyes found Celine immediately, and that strange warmth in her chest flared. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. My lord, this is highly irregular, an elderly vampire began. She sits beside me, Corvus. Or would you like to challenge my authority? The vampire's mouth snapped shut. Celine took the seat, acutely aware of every hostile gaze burning into her. Cale leaned back in his chair with lazy confidence, but she noticed his fingers drumming once against the armrest, the only sign he wasn't as calm as he appeared. Explain to our guests what you've been screaming about for the past hour, Cale said lazily. Mira slammed her palms on the table. The royal protection bond is sacred, my lord. It hasn't been invoked in 3 centuries, and for good reason. Your life is now magically tied to hers, she pointed at Celine with disgust. If she dies, you die. If she's wounded, you feel it. You've bound yourself to a fragile human who could trip down stairs and kill you both. The warmth in Celine's chest suddenly made horrible sense. What?
Cale's smile was sharp. Surprise.
You can't just… Celine's heart raced, and she saw Cale's fingers twitch. Could he feel it? Remove it. Break the bond. Can't be broken except by death, Corvus said grimly. The king has essentially made you immortal by proxy. As long as he lives, you'll heal from almost anything. But harm you, and you harm him. Why would you do something so stupid? Celine demanded, rounding on Cale. His red eyes gleamed with dark amusement. Perhaps I was bored. Or perhaps I sensed something interesting about you. He leaned forward suddenly, invading her space. Tell me, Celine, how did you throw 2 armed soldiers across a courtyard last night? How did you cut through blessed silver armor? Her blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're… Don't lie, his voice dropped dangerously low. I can hear your heartbeat spike. I tasted the magic in your blood when you touched me. You're not entirely human, are you? The room fell silent. My mother used to tell me stories, Celine whispered finally, about an artifact called the Dawn relic. But they were just fairy tales. Cale and Corvus exchanged a loaded glance. The Dawn relic, Corvus breathed, was created from the union of the first vampire and human who fell in love. It was meant to bridge our worlds. Instead, it nearly destroyed both. It was sealed away centuries ago, hidden in a bloodline that… He stopped, staring at Celine with dawning horror. Oh gods! You're a descendant. The relic isn't just near you, Cale said softly, standing and circling behind her chair. It's in you. Dormant. Waiting. That's why your blood sings with old magic. His hand came to rest on her shoulder, possessive and threatening at once. And now every vampire and human who wants that power will be hunting you. Celine's hands clenched into fists. Then let me leave. I'll run far away, and your bond will. You run, I feel it. You hurt, I hurt. You die, he leaned down until his lips brushed her ear. We die together. You're not going anywhere, little rabbit. So, I'm your prisoner. You're my responsibility, he straightened, addressing the council. Spread the word. The human is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. As the council filed out, muttering darkly, Celine felt tears burn her eyes. She'd escaped Eric only to become trapped by something far more dangerous. Cale watched her with those ancient eyes. Tell me about this ex-fiancé who burned your village. Her head snapped up. How did you? You spoke his name in your sleep. Eric, his smile turned predatory. I think it's time I learned exactly who made you run into my arms. 3 days in the citadel felt like 3 years. Celine learned quickly that vampire politics made human warfare look like children's games. Every glance carried meaning. Every word hid 3 more. And she, the human bound to their king, had become the most dangerous piece on the board. Stop fidgeting, Cale murmured beside her. They sat in the grand hall, surrounded by vampire nobility dressed in silks and jewels that probably cost more than her entire village. A feast was laid out, exotic fruits, aged wines, and other dishes Celine tried not to examine too closely. The vampires barely touched the food. They were too busy staring at her. I'm not fidgeting, she hissed back. I'm trying not to stab someone. His lips quirked. That's my girl. I'm not your Lord Kale. A vampire with coal-black skin and golden eyes approached, bowing low. Might I have a word about the situation? The situation has a name. Lord Theron. Kale's tone could have frozen fire. Use it. Theron's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. Lady Celine, the title dripped with sarcasm. There are concerns about your presence here. Surely you understand the delicacy of housing a human in our sacred halls. Before Celine could respond, a younger vampire with copper hair stepped forward. Delicacy? Or cowardice? Theron? I find it fascinating that our king has finally claimed someone worthy of protection. Worthy? Theron's voice rose. She's clearly a spy. The commander who destroyed her village probably sent her here to what? Kale interrupted, his voice soft and deadly. Infiltrate my court by bleeding all over my throne room? Brilliant strategy. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. There are prophecies, an elderly female vampire called out. Speak of the moon-blooded, a human carrying divine magic who would either save or damn our kind. What if she's? Prophecies are stories we tell ourselves to feel important, Kale said dismissively. But Celine felt his hand tighten on his goblet. The copper-haired vampire knelt before Celine suddenly. I, for one, believe our king's judgment is sound. If Lady Celine carries ancient magic, perhaps she's exactly what we need. The humans grow bolder every year. This Commander Eric has already destroyed 3 border villages, claiming he's purging vampire sympathizers. Celine's stomach twisted. 3 villages. How many more families had Eric slaughtered? I heard he's offered a reward, Theron said casually. 10,000 gold coins for information leading to a human girl with bewitching powers. He claims she seduced our king with dark magic. His smile was poison. Quite the romantic story. The hall erupted in whispers. Kale stood slowly, and silence fell like a blade. Let me be clear. Celine is here because I chose to protect her. Anyone who believes she bewitched me is welcome to challenge my authority. Form a line. I'll kill you one at a time, or all at once. Your preference. No one moved. Excellent, he pulled Celine to her feet. Now, my ward and I have better things to do than listen to gossip. He practically dragged her out of the hall, his grip on her wrist firm but not painful. They didn't stop until they reached a balcony, overlooking the ebonwood forest, bathed in eternal moonlight. That was a disaster, Celine said once they were alone. That was politics. Kale released her, leaning against the stone railing. Half of them think you're dangerous. The other half think you're useful. Both groups want you gone. Comforting. You handled yourself well, he glanced at her sideways. The fidgeting aside, despite everything, Celine almost smiled. Almost. This Commander Eric, he won't stop. He thinks I know where the relic is. He'll come for me. Let him. Kale's eyes gleamed red in the moonlight. I haven't had a good fight in decades. He'll bring an army. Holy fire. Silver weapons. He's not just some soldier, Kale. He's the supreme commander of the Holy Legion. Thousands follow him. And I'm the Vampire King. Thousands fear me. He turned to face her fully. Tell me about him. Not the commander. The man you almost married. Celine's throat tightened. Why does it matter? Because he betrayed you, and you're still defending him. Kale stepped closer. You flinch when I move too quickly. You sleep with a knife under your pillow. Those aren't habits from a loving relationship. She looked away. He wasn't always like this. When we met, he was kind, protective. He promised we'd build something beautiful together. Her voice cracked. I don't know when he changed. Or maybe he never changed. Maybe I just refused to see who he really was. And now I see perfectly clearly. She met Kale's gaze. He's a monster who hides behind righteousness. And he'll burn this entire kingdom to ash if he thinks I'm here. Kale smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. Then let him come. I've been waiting centuries for an excuse to remind humans why they fear the dark. He touched her face gently, almost tenderly, and Celine felt that bond between them pulse with warmth. You sought refuge in my shadows, Celine. Now, let me show you what shadows can do. In the distance, war drums began to echo through the forest. The dream started that night. Celine walked through corridors of light and shadow, following a voice that sang in a language older than words. It pulled at something deep in her chest, not the bond with Kale, but something else. Something that had been sleeping her entire life. Come home, daughter of two worlds.
Come home.
She woke standing in the middle of her chamber, bare feet cold against stone. Her hand was pressed against the wall, and beneath her palm, ancient runes glowed with soft golden light. What the? The runes spread like veins through the stone, illuminating a hidden doorway that cracked open with a groan of centuries-old hinges. Celine knew she should call for help. Wake Kale.
Tell someone.
Instead, she stepped through. The passage spiraled downward into darkness, lit only by those golden veins pulsing in the walls. They seemed to respond to her presence, brightening as she passed. The air grew warmer with each step, humming with power that made her skin prickle. The stairs ended in a vast underground chamber. Celine's breath caught. The room was circular, its domed ceiling painted with stars that moved like the ones in her bedroom. In the center stood a pedestal of white marble, and hovering above it, suspended in nothing, was a crystal heart the size of her fist. It pulsed with inner light, beating in perfect rhythm with her own heart. Beautiful.
Terrifying. Familiar.
Hello, Celine whispered. The crystal flared brilliant gold, and suddenly she wasn't alone in her own mind. Images flooded her consciousness. A vampire with kind eyes and a human woman with her mother's smile, their hands clasped as they forged the crystal together. Love and magic intertwining. Peace between their peoples. Then war.
Blood.
Betrayal. The crystal shattering into pieces, scattered across the world. Her ancestors fleeing, carrying one piece in their very blood, generation after generation, waiting for someone strong enough to make it whole again. Celine stumbled forward, reaching out with trembling fingers. The moment she touched the crystal, power exploded through her veins like liquid fire. She screamed. The bond with Kale ignited like a beacon, and she felt his shock, his pain, his terror. The chamber doors burst open. Kale materialized in a blur of shadow and fury, taking in the scene instantly. His eyes widened at the sight of the crystal, now glowing so bright it hurt to look at. Celine, let go. He lunged forward, but an invisible barrier slammed him backward. Celine. She couldn't. The crystal had fused to her palm, and visions continued to pour through her. Thousands of years of history, of magic, of a love so powerful it had tried to reshape the world. You are the vessel. You are the key. You are the bridge between night and day. Make it stop. Celine sobbed, falling to her knees. Her blood felt like it was boiling, rewriting itself. The dormant power in her veins, hidden for 22 years, roared to life. Kale threw himself against the barrier again and again, his face twisted with anguish. Through their bond, she could feel his helplessness, his rage at not being able to reach her. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The crystal dissolved into pure light and sank into Celine's chest, right above her heart. She collapsed forward, gasping, and the barrier vanished. Kale caught her before she hit the ground. You reckless, foolish, he cradled her against his chest, his hands frantically checking for injuries. What were you thinking? I didn't mean to, her voice was raw. The dreams. It called to me. The relic, his voice was hollow. It's bonded to you, not just carried in your blood. You are the relic now. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Mira, Corvus, and a dozen guards poured into the chamber, weapons drawn. They froze at the sight of Celine glowing with faint golden light, cradled in their king's arms. By the old gods, Corvus breathed. The prophecy is true. She's the moon-blooded. My lord, The surge of magic. Myra's face went pale. Every creature within 100 miles felt that, including humans. Kale's jaw clenched. How long until they reach us? If Eric's forces were already moving toward the border? Mira calculated quickly. 3 days. Maybe less. He'll know exactly where she is now. Corvus looked grim. That kind of power signature can't be hidden. Kale stood, lifting Celine effortlessly. Then we prepare for war. Double the guards on all borders. Recall our forces from the outer territories. And someone find out exactly what the moon-blooded prophecy actually says, because I'm not letting ancient words dictate our fate. My lord. Theron appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. There's something you should know. We captured a human spy near the eastern wall. He was carrying a message. He held up a sealed letter. From Commander Eric. It's addressed to Lady Celine. Celine's blood turned to ice. What does it say? Theron broke the seal and read aloud. Return to me willingly, and I'll spare the vampire scum. Refuse, and I'll paint these stones with their blood before I take you anyway. You have 3 days. Choose wisely, my love. The chamber fell deathly silent. Kale's eyes burned crimson. Well then, let's give the commander exactly what he's asking for. His smile promised violence. A war. The frontier cliffs looked like the edge of the world. Celine stood beside Kale on the highest point, watching the sunrise, the first real sunrise she'd seen since entering the Ebonwood. It painted the sky in shades of blood and gold, beautiful and terrible. Below, stretching across the valley, Eric's army waited. Thousands of soldiers in silver armor, their holy banners snapping in the wind. War machines lined the front, catapults loaded with vessels of holy fire, ballistas armed with silver-tipped bolts. And at the center, mounted on a white warhorse, sat Eric himself. Even from this distance, Celine could feel his eyes on her. You don't have to fight, Kale said quietly. You could stay in the citadel, protected. No, Celine's hand went to the sword at her hip, a gift from Kale, forged from starlight and shadow. He came here for me. I won't hide while others die. Kale's expression softened. You've changed, little rabbit. 3 days ago, you were trembling between my legs. Now you're ready to face an army. 3 days ago, I had nothing to fight for. She met his gaze. Now I do. Something passed between them, unspoken but profound. The bond hummed with warmth, and for a moment, the coming battle felt very far away. Then war horns shattered the silence. Eric's army surged forward like a silver tide. Behind Celine, Kale's forces erupted from the tree line, vampires moving with inhuman speed, their battle cries echoing off the cliffs. Stay close to me, Kale commanded, drawing his own blade, black steel that seemed to drink in light. The bond means if you fall, I fall. But it also means we can share power, Celine finished. She'd figured it out during 3 sleepless nights, studying the relic's memories. My light, your darkness. His smile was fierce. Smart girl. Let's show them what that means. They charged down the cliff together. The battle was chaos incarnate. Holy fire met shadow magic in explosions of light and dark. Silver weapons clashed against vampire claws. Celine moved through the madness, the relic's power flowing through her veins, making her faster, stronger than any human should be. A soldier swung at her head. She ducked, feeling Kale's combat instincts guide her movements through their bond, and drove her blade through the man's armor. Another attacked from behind. Kale appeared in a blur of motion, ripping the soldier's throat out with his bare hand. They fought back to back, perfectly synchronized. When Celine's strength flagged, Kale's power surged through the bond, revitalizing her. When holy fire forced Kale to retreat, Celine's light magic shielded him from its burns. 2 halves of one weapon. Celine. Eric's voice cut through the battle like a knife. The fighting around them slowed as soldiers parted, creating a circle. He dismounted, walking toward her with deliberate steps, his blessed sword gleaming. Enough of this, his handsome face was spattered with blood, vampire blood. You've made your point. Come home, and I'll call off the attack. Home. Celine's laugh was bitter. You murdered my home, Eric. You killed my parents. There's nothing left between us but ashes. I did what was necessary. His composure cracked. That relic inside you, it's an abomination.
Can't you see?
You were never fully human, Celine. You're corrupted, tainted by vampire magic. She's more than you could ever understand, Cale growled, moving to Celine's side. Eric's eyes locked on Cale with pure hatred. The Vampire King. I should thank you, really. You've proven everything I believed. Vampires corrupt everything they touch. You've turned my betrothed into a monster. I was never yours, Celine said coldly. I see that now. You didn't love me, Eric. You loved the idea of me. Pure, obedient, human. But I was never just human, was I? No. Eric's expression twisted into something ugly. You're a half-breed abomination. Your bloodline is the first vampire-human union, the original sin that poisoned both our races. The surrounding soldiers gasped. Even some of Cale's vampires looked shocked. That's why your blood is so valuable, Eric continued, circling them slowly. It contains the key to ending both vampires and the corrupted humans who carry their taint. One sacrifice, your sacrifice, and I can purify the world. No more vampires. No more half-breeds. Just pure humanity, the way God intended. You're insane, Celine breathed. I'm a visionary, he raised his sword. And you're coming with me, willing or not. Kill the Vampire King. Bring me the girl alive. Soldiers surged forward. Cale and Celine moved as one, their powers intertwining, gold and crimson, light and shadow. The relic flared in Celine's chest, and she felt its full potential awakening. She could end this. The power was there, begging to be released. But Eric had planned for that. A silver net fell from above, blessed by 1,000 priests, woven with holy magic. It tangled around Cale, burning his skin, cutting off his connection to his power. Cale. Eric's blade flashed toward the Vampire King's heart. Celine didn't think. She just moved. The sword meant for Cale pierced her chest instead. White-hot, all-consuming pain that turned the world into nothing but agony and light. Celine gasped, looking down at the blessed sword protruding from her chest, just left of her heart. Eric's face, so close to hers, registered shock, then something darker. Satisfaction. Perfect, he whispered. Your blood on holy steel. Exactly what I need. Then Cale screamed. The sound was inhuman, primal, filled with centuries of power and rage. The blessed net around him disintegrated as dark energy exploded outward, sending soldiers flying like leaves in a storm. He caught Celine as she fell, his hands frantically pressing against her wound. No, 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 his voice cracked. Celine, why would you? Bond, she choked out, blood bubbling on her lips. Goes both ways. Can't let you die. Through their connection, she felt everything, his terror, his anguish, and underneath it all, something she'd never expected.
Love.
Raw and desperate, and so powerful it nearly stopped her failing heart. The relic in her chest blazed to life. Golden light poured from her wound, and suddenly Celine was seeing double, through her eyes and Cale's simultaneously. She felt his immortal strength, his ancient power, and the horrifying sensation of her life draining into him, the bond forcing him to experience her death in real time. I can save you, Cale said desperately, biting his own wrist. My blood, drink, please. Won't work, Corvus appeared beside them, his ancient face grave. The sword is blessed. It's killing her from the inside. Vampire blood will only speed up the process. Around them, the battle had stopped. Both armies watched as their leaders, Vampire King and Human Girl, knelt in a pool of spreading gold and crimson. Eric stalked closer, wiping his blade clean. How poetic. The monster watches his pet die, powerless to save her. Perhaps now you understand, King of Shadows. This is what happens when you defy the natural order. Kale's eyes lifted, burning with crimson fire. Natural order? You know nothing of nature, human. You speak of purity while bathing in innocent blood. You're not a savior. You're a butcher hiding behind faith. And you're a corpse clinging to stolen life. Eric raised his sword again. But don't worry. You'll join her soon enough. The blade descended toward Kale's neck. The relic exploded with light. Celine's hand shot out, catching the sword barehanded. The blessed steel seared her palm, but she didn't let go. Power, ancient, terrible, beautiful, flooded through her veins, burning away the poison, knitting flesh and bone. You want to end the curse between our kinds? Her voice echoed with two tones, hers and something far older. You want purity? Then witness what true unity looks like. She yanked the sword from her chest in a spray of golden light. Kale caught her meaning through the bond.
Selene, no.
If you use all the relic's power. I know, she smiled at him through tears and blood. But some things are worth dying for. She placed her glowing hand on his chest, right over his unbeating heart. The bond between them, forged in desperation, strengthened in battle, became a conduit. She poured the relic's power into him, light flooding darkness, mortality touching immortality. Kale gasped as warmth spread through his chest. His heart, silent for 8 centuries, beat. What are you doing? He tried to pull away, but she held firm. Giving you what you sacrificed. Her body was dimming, the light fading as she transferred the relic's essence into him. You can't die with me, Kale, but you can live. Really live. Not without you. His hands cupped her face desperately. Celine, please. Then don't let me go. She collapsed forward, and Kale caught her, cradling her against his chest as his own heart beat for the first time in centuries. The relic's power swirled between them, her mortal light, his immortal darkness, seeking balance, seeking harmony. Choose, the ancient magic whispered. One cannot exist without the other. Both must sacrifice, or both must die. Kale understood. To save her, he had to give up what defined him for 800 years. Take it, he snarled at the magic, at fate, at whatever gods were listening. Take my immortality, my power, everything. Just let her live. The world went white. When the light faded, Kale and Celine lay entwined on the battlefield, both breathing, both bleeding, both mortal. The relic was gone, not destroyed, but fulfilled, its purpose complete. It had finally created what it was always meant to, true balance between two worlds. Above them, the eclipse broke. For the first time in centuries, dawn light touched the ebonwood forest. Eric stared in horror as sunlight, which should have destroyed Kale, merely warmed his pale skin.
Impossible.
You're supposed to burn. You're supposed to. I'm supposed to be free, Kale said quietly, still holding Celine. And now I am. Around them, vampires and humans alike stood frozen, witnessing something that hadn't happened since the first dawn of creation. A vampire king, bathed in sunlight, very much alive. The war was over. Neither side had won. Everything had changed. 6 weeks later, the valley looked different. Where armies had clashed, wildflowers now grew, gold and purple, pushing through soil still dark with old blood. Celine walked through them slowly, her hand trailing over the soft petals, marveling at how quickly life reclaimed what death had touched. Behind her, the sound of hammers echoed, rebuilding. After the relic sacrifice, everything had changed in ways no one expected. Kale's mortality had proven what Eric's zealotry couldn't accept. Vampires weren't inherently evil, just as humans weren't inherently good. They were simply two sides of a same coin, both capable of darkness and light. Eric had tried to rally his remaining forces, screaming about corruption and abomination. But his own soldiers had seen the truth on that battlefield. Many had laid down their weapons. Others had simply walked away. Eric himself had vanished in the chaos, disappearing into the wilderness. Some said he'd gone mad. Others whispered he was gathering a new army. Celine tried not to think about him at all. "You're up early." She turned to find Cale approaching, carrying 2 cups of tea. He moved differently now, less predatory grace, more human awkwardness. Sunlight caught in his black hair, and she was still getting used to seeing him in daylight. He was somehow even more beautiful. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, taking the offered cup. The dreams again. The blood moon. He'd been having them too. Phantom memories of that terrible night, twisted into nightmares.
No.
Different this time, she smiled softly. "I dreamed of my parents. They were standing in a field of flowers like these, and my mother said. She said they were proud of me." Cale's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. 6 weeks, and the bond between them hadn't faded with the relic's departure. If anything, it had grown stronger, no longer magical compulsion, but genuine choice. "They would be," he said quietly. "You saved 2 species from destroying each other." "We saved them," she squeezed his hand. "I couldn't have done it alone." "No," he agreed. "Apparently I needed a reckless human girl to teach an 800-year-old vampire about sacrifice." She laughed. The sound still surprised her. How easily joy came now despite everything they'd lost. 800 years and you never learned? Slow learner. His smile was warm, mortal real. "I had poor teachers. Until you." They walked together toward the construction site, a new village rising from the ashes of Celine's old home. Vampires and humans worked side by side now, hauling timber, laying foundations. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, suspicious glances, old prejudices dying hard. But it was a start. Mira approached, covered in sawdust. She'd been instrumental in organizing the rebuilding efforts, her centuries of experience proving invaluable. "The Eastern Wall is nearly complete, and we received word from the capital. The Human Council wants to send ambassadors to discuss a formal peace treaty." "Progress," Cale said, though his tone held caution. Peace built in 6 weeks was fragile. "There's something else." Myra's expression turned serious. "We found evidence that Eric had supporters in high places. This wasn't just one zealot's crusade. There are still factions on both sides who believe segregation is safer than integration." Celine's jaw tightened. "Then we keep building. Keep proving them wrong. One village at a time if we have to." Mira studied them both, the former vampire king and the girl who'd carried a relic in her blood, and nodded. "You two are either the bravest fools I've ever met or the wisest." She paused. "I haven't decided which. Can't we be both?" Cale asked dryly. After Mira left, Celine and Cale climbed to the top of a nearby hill, the same spot where Eric's army had gathered. Now it offered a view of the valley's slow transformation. "Do you regret it?" Celine asked quietly. "Giving up immortality? 8 centuries of power, gone in a moment." Cale was silent for a long time, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of rose and amber. "I spent 800 years in darkness, Celine. Watching civilizations rise and fall. Watching everyone I could have cared about wither and die while I remained unchanged." He turned to her, and his crimson eyes, still vampire red, some things didn't change, held infinite tenderness. "You gave me something more valuable than immortality. You gave me a reason to live, not just exist." Tears burned her eyes. "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Give me time. I'm still learning this mortality thing." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Though I should warn you, vampire courtship traditionally lasts several decades. We're very thorough." She laughed through her tears. "I think we can speed up the timeline." Rebellious to the end, he kissed her softly, warmly, full of promise and hope and futures neither of them had thought they'd have. When they pulled apart, the sun had fully risen. No blood moon, no curse, just dawn breaking clean and new over a world learning to heal. You sought refuge in my shadows, Kale murmured, echoing words from another lifetime. Celine smiled, completing the thought, and gave you back your dawn. Hand in hand, they walked toward the village, no longer king and fugitive, no longer vampire and human, but simply two people who'd found something worth fighting for in each other. Behind them, the ebonwood forest stood silent and ancient, keeping its secrets. Ahead, the future waited, uncertain, dangerous, beautiful. Together, they would face it. The end.